Hi, welcome to the chainsaw video here. We're going to be talking about types of chain today. The first thing to think about is when we're talking about saw chain, we got three measurements that we want to keep track of. The first one's called the pitch, and that would be the distance between the rivets, how long a space between the drive links we have. Then the next measurement would be gauge, which would be how wide a groove in the bar where the drive links travel, how wide is that groove. And then the third measurement that's important for getting the right chain would be the number of drive links. That's how we measure the length of the chain. So an example that I have here would be I have this Oregon model chain, and it's a 72 EXL 60G. And so the first number, this is confusing for people sometimes, is the model of the chain. So 72 just refers to the model of the chain. That would tell us that this is a 3/8 regular, 3/8 pitch chain. Model 72 comes in a 50 gauge, so that's the width of the drive links, and it's 60 drivers long. So for regular, the standard measurement for a 16-inch bar and regular 3/8 is 60 drivers. So when I look at it, I know it's for a 16-inch bar because I sell a lot of chain. Alrighty. All right, so let's take a closer look at the chains here. So I've laid out on the chain bench four different kinds of chain, three of which are really the most common chain for the average chainsaw user. This chain down at the bottom is what we call 325, and that again is the distance between the rivets. Okay. And 325 is commonly used on chainsaws that are like 40 to 50 cc's. The next chain that we have above that is, you can see it's actually got smaller teeth, but if you look closely, the distance between the rivets is a little bit longer. Okay, this particular chain is what we call 3/8 low pro. So low pro chain is for smaller saws, kind of like the Stihl MS-180 or a Husky 120, something. And actually, a lot of the electric saws nowadays, the battery saws, use a 3/8 low pro pitch. Okay, so that's smaller teeth, but it has actually a longer distance between the links here than the 325. And I've got this up there because you also have regular 3/8, which is, again, this guy here is probably, is top three of what common chains. That's for usually larger saws, 50 cc's and up, be running the full 3/8 chain. It has the same distance between the rivets as the 3/8 low pro, but you can see the size of the chain is much different. And so that's one thing that people get confused, is they try to put the bigger chain on the smaller 3/8 saw, and it might kind of go on there, but it's not quite right. And then the last chain I have on here is it's 404, so that has the longest distance between the rivets of common chains that are in use today. This particular chain, you can see it's much bigger teeth on it. It's 404 pitch, and it's actually designed for like firewood processors or cut to length machines in the wood that have a big saw blade on them to cut things to length or to limb. Or a bar slasher might have this. And then there's actually another size called 3/4 where it's significantly bigger, and that's for big bar slashers and things like that. All right. So next we have to kind of figure out what chain do we need. So we've got our demonstration bar here. This is a Forester. Most bars have some kind of markings, some kind of numbers that help us figure out what kind of chain it's going to take. In Forester land, they have they're telling us that the first set of numbers here is a 16. Then it says 3/8, 50, 60. Okay, and so again, we're trying to find those three important numbers. We're trying to find the pitch, we're trying to find the gauge, and we're trying to find the drive links. Okay, so on this the 3/8 is telling us that it's a 3/8 chain that we need, and that it's a 50 gauge. And again, gauge is the width of the groove in the bar. So that's got to be correct, because if you put too fat a drive link in that, and you know, too big a gauge, it's not going to slide in the groove of the bar. You might be able to jam it in there, but the saw won't be able to turn it because of all the friction of all the drive links that are too tight. And then the last one is this 60, which is our 60 driver chain. So that we had our example here, which is 72 model Oregon, which we know is 3/8, 50 gauge, 60 drivers. And so I can set the chain on the bar here, and we'll see that it's when I put it over the sprocket at the nose of the bar, you see that it sets on there and sits on there nicely. And then I can see that the you know, that it slides well in the groove, and it's not too floppy. So if I tried to run this 50 gauge in a bar that was set up to do 58 gauge, I'd actually have some extra play there. You can also have extra play when the bar is just worn. But so it's looking good to me. Looks like I got the right chain for this bar, because also I can hang it on the bar here and see that I have a tail that's going to be able to go over the sprocket, have enough room to get onto the saw that I'm installing it on. So what happens, one way to tell when you have the wrong one, let's see here. I'm going to grab another, you know, again, very common chain. It's the 325 pitch, and I'm going to try to put it on the bar, and hopefully you can see that it doesn't want to sit on the sprocket well, and that's because the spacing of the drive links does not match the spacing on the teeth of the sprocket. So we can see we're trying to spin it around, and it just won't ride nicely. And if you got as far as having it on the saw, it'd be making a lot of noise and chattering like crazy, because it'd be jumping over the teeth on the sprocket trying to find a spot to sit, and it just doesn't. It's just not going well. So I know that this bar is a different pitch, and that would be important, because not every bar, you know, the paint might be worn off and we don't know, you know, exactly what it's supposed to be. So often I'll take a chain that I know, this, of course, Oregon chain, you've got your stamped model number on there, and so this particular chain is a model 20, and model 20, I know from, you know, selling lots of chain, is a 325 50 gauge. So the gauge was right. It wanted to sit in the bar nicely, even though it's a smaller tooth chain. If I can do it here without cutting my fingers. It sits in the bar nicely, not too loose. That would work well, but again, it won't go over the sprocket. One of the things that people have a hard time with, or get confused about, is they think that they could run a bigger chain. Say they had the 325 chain already, but they wanted to step it up. The thing that they're forgetting about is that you've also got the drive sprocket, and the drive sprocket has to match the pitch of the bar that's on the saw. They have to be the same. So you can't just change the bar in order to change what chain you're running. For example, just like on the other one, if I try to loop it around this sprocket, it's just not going to ride nicely. It's trying to jump and carry on, and it's not working for us. One thing that you can change is you can change the gauge, right? So a lot of the gauge, again, is the distance, is the width of the groove in the bar, okay? And so a lot of the older Husqvarna, they, you know, or most of the Husqvarnas and John Sureds, they ran what we call 58 gauge, which is a slightly, you know, you're talking 8/1000ths of an inch thicker drive link. And you know, as people, they may want to change to a new bar because that's what's available, is in a different gauge, but it's the same pitch, which means the distance on the sprocket is the same that's on their saw. You can do that. You can run a different gauge if you switch the bar. And one reason people do that is that they might have a steel saw and a Husky saw, and the steel bars typically for 3/8 come in 50 gauge, and they might have been running the standard 58 gauge on their Husky, but they're saying to themselves, well, it'd be nice if I had the same chain for both. So they might change the bar on their Husky to have 50 gauge. They could buy one version of chain and work on both of the bars that have both saws have the same 20-inch bar. Where you run into trouble is that steel has different drive lengths counts for like 18 inches. So the standard 3/8 in Husqvarna, Jonsered, Dolmar land would be 68 drivers for an 18-inch 3/8 chain. In steel land, your 18-inch chain is going to be 66 drivers, so it'll be too short. So that's, I guess, my video.